as we said last week, DP is an encyclopedia on steroids, or Google to the infinitieth power. So excited to have DP back. It's like Christmas in November. So
Hey,
love
man.
to
Confidence, fellow.
love to
Hey,
hear who
you put
you.
me on one today. And of course, you know how this works, that once you go down the rabbit hole, it veers off in several different spaces. So then you're talking about the greatest finishing moves in all of pro wrestling history. You've got to consider, is this iconic? Are these the iconic finishes, right? They're the ones that are the most memorable, with the greatest general public knowledge of and connection to? Is it the greatest for the duration, right? For the duration, there are 10 finishes that, quite frankly, have carried Pro Wrestling World Championships the farthest. Like, gone the furthest. Like, the ones where the reigns were based on longevity. This move controlled the title for the greatest amount of time, and then, quite frankly, then there are finishes that have never been kicked out of or beaten. Like, once this finishing move happens, there aren't that many in pro wrestling history where that was it. Like, this was it. And no matter whether you were fighting another world champion, whether you were fighting at WrestleMania, whether you were fighting a Hall of Famer or not, there's a handful of holds that, once applied, never got broken. So there's several ways to go, brother.
Well, I guess let's see which didn't make the top.
What didn't make the top 10.
Okay.
What didn't make the top 10. And this is spectacular, right? This is absolutely spectacular. Sergeant Slaughter's Cobra Clutch didn't make it. The Iron Sheik beating Bob Backlund for the world title with the Camel Clutch didn't make it. Baron von Raschke, High Chief Peter Maivia, and the Von Erich families, the Claw, didn't make the list. Razor's Edge didn't make the list. Brogue Kick didn't make the list. Let's go back. Remember that pro wrestling started before 1980, so Junkyard Dog and the Big Thunk, Bobo Brazil and the Cocoa Butt. There's so many iconic ones. Any crossface. I mean, Chris Benoit winning the title with a crossface, and Bob Backlund holding a 7-year reign with the crossface. Really didn't matter. Choke slam. How many different variances of the choke slam, and the different wrestlers that used it. We can go back in the day to Stan Stasiak and the heart punch, where, back in the day, if he punched you in the chest, he would raise your arm above your head, punch you in the chest, and it was supposed to stop your heart. Like, it's spectacular how so much of it plays. Various elbows. So whose elbow is the greatest elbow of all time? Is the People's Elbow? Is the Bionic Elbow by Dusty Rhodes, in which he won 2 world titles? Is it Macho Man's elbow off the top rope? That's iconic in that space. How do you play that? How do you use that? Whose figure 4 leg lock? Which figure 4 leg? Is it the Las Vegas leg? Is it the Buddy Rogers iconic first one? How do you do it? So I ended up with this because I packaged some with, like, Randy Orton. People immediately think RKO, but the punt is the one that won titles and never got broken. Like, when Orton punted you, it was over, and nobody ever got up from it. Is it Hulk Hogan's leg drop, or is it The Rock's People's Elbow? Which one is it? How do you deal with it? But I landed on this. I landed with the Diamond Cutter, because DDP's Diamond Cutter, bam, that carried NWO and elevated it for a long while. Underrated, the Lariat. Stan Hansen actually beat the iconic Bruiser Sammartino with a Lariat with a loaded elbow pad that he turned around, had metal in it, hit Bruno, broke his neck. That one falls in space. The jackhammer, the jackhammer slam by Goldberg. Is it that or his spear? Which one do you take? Sweet Chin Music stands at the top of this thing, iconic in how it was presented. Superman Punch because of what it's doing now, and it's a great bear out. The Jimmy Snuka iconic splash off the top of the cage. There's only been one. Nothing else matters. Nobody else can do it the way he did it. It just wouldn't matter. The bear hug is an iconic wrestling hold for decades. And let's not forget the inevitable. We all practice it. We all got in trouble for using it. But the sleeper hold in any variant, whether it's the Cobra Clutch or Chief J Strongbow's, hey, I'm going to wrap my arms around your neck and put you to sleep. All of that's in play. Triple H's pedigree. Flair's figure four is one of the great moves ever. F5 and Brock Lesnar, of course, what he's done with that. But ultimately this, and Hoss, you and Harrison know me well enough to know that in order to talk pro wrestling at the greatest level, the highest level, the most dominant thing that nobody ever defeated, and quite frankly, is the most powerful move in all of wrestling history. It is Andre the Giant and his size 24 foot to the chin. It's greater than Sweet Chin Music. It took down the greatest giants across the world. It is simply the greatest finishing move in all time, which is Andre's headbutt, Andre putting his 700-pound butt on your face, and then picking you up and putting that size 24 shoe to your chin. That was the original Chin Music, not Shawn Michaels. Your thoughts?
I told you guys it's an encyclopedia on steroids, and it's Google to the infinity power, and you did not disappoint. I also said in last week's show that you could tell which generation or how old someone is based on what they say. You could tell I'm a little younger because my top five, I had the Stunner as number 5.
Mm-hmm.
It's now being replicated by Kevin Owens. Obviously, Stone Cold, he knocked you out with it. It was awesome. It was who could take the Stunner the best. That was what was who could sell the Stunner the best. That was what the early 2000s, late 90s was about. I think the jackknife powerbomb. Obviously, power bombs were used in different ways, but the jackknife powerbomb, when Kevin Nash or Diesel hit you with that, it was over. And obviously, you could say a Batista bomb was like that. You could say the Shield kind of used that, and so there's lots of variations of that power bomb. So that made number 4. The RKO, and I love that you said the punt because you're spot on. That was a very underrated move that had to get outlawed, and it actually injured people, so it had to get outlawed. So
yeah.
The RKO, also known.
Before you give your final 3, let me give you 3. Let me give you 3 in particular that intrigued me. 2 of them are on the women's side. If I asked you what 2 women's finishing moves never got broken, right? So go to the immediate pass. Ronda Rousey's armbar still hasn't been broken. But before that, iconic to the game, the great Victoria, the trainer of all the divas, and Victoria had a move that she would elevate, and it was kind of that pump handle slam kind of deal. But her move was so good that nobody had replicated it, and it's never been broken in over 450 matches. How good is that Victoria has her own place in wrestling history, that thing's never been done. But the one that's not spoken about the most is the sharpshooter, Bret Hitman Hart changed wrestling with the sharpshooter, and it became, because it was a great combination of several things, right? I think it's underrated. I just think it's underrated. What's your top three?
Well, since you brought up women and dominating moves, the Implant Buster by Awesome Kong, that would knock women out and damage them. So thanks for bringing up the women, and the figure 8 right now is going pretty well for Charlotte, being a 13-time champion. But RKO, you said it, just with what Randy Orton did and with what DDP did, it would quickly out of nowhere cause a victory. And so RKO is number 3.
Right.
I'm an HBK guy, Triple H HBK guy, and tuning up the band anytime that, if you want to talk about coming out of nowhere, that kick would come out of nowhere. And that kick is iconic, that we all wanted to do it. We all wanted to come out to the music of "I'm just a sexy boy." And if I had
probably somewhere there's that HBK outfit. Leather boy toy with the leather hat, biker hat vibe.
Yeah. So I can do a sweet chin music to like my 5-year-old. That's how far I could kick up, and that's yep. But the last one has to be, we talked about banned moves. This move was banned for everyone but The Undertaker. And for the longest time, no one kicked out of it. It was the Tombstone Piledriver. And when he put his thumb across his throat and then pin you and put his tongue out, it was over. And the Tombstone Piledriver, it was the move for me growing up.
But it was the last ride that was his world championship. When you remember, for 60% of his championship matches, the last ride was high, and it was never kicked out of. The last ride was never kicked out of. We should be ashamed of ourselves, because it just hit me on 2 of that very same era. I should have put this in with the People's Elbow and Hogan's leg drop. Now, again, Hogan's leg drop defeated some of the greatest Hall of Famers to ever live. Wrestling purists hated it because it was so basic. But in the same space, John Cena's "You Can't See Me" is still, if you just did it and didn't say what you were doing, even people walking down the street would know who did it and what you were talking about. But one of the great era-changing moves, finishing moves of all time, and it didn't matter what persona he was under, but the mandible claw, Mankind, like Mick Foley, the mandible claw reigned wrestling for a 7-year stretch. So we got to put that one in the conversation too.
Yeah, and with DMD doing it now, Britt Baker, she needs to come back and hold the belt on AEW. I thought about the claw when you were saying earlier on, when you were paying homage to the older wrestlers and talking about claws. I thought you were throwing that in there, but man, thank you for saying the last ride. That's why I also had the Jackknife Powerbomb in there. Maybe the Jackknife Powerbomb should have moved to 3 or 2, but just be the sheer volume of people using power bombs. But it's a lot of moves.
It's the big, that and the choke slam are the big man's artillery 1 and 2. Like those are the things you have to learn how to use and have it used on you in order for you to make it. That's just when you go to the factory, those are the things you have to learn first. How to execute those and how to have those executed on you. I got another one for you that, quite frankly, tickles me beyond words. But the RVD frog splash.
Yeah.
Like, as I was just thinking about it, that one went a long, long way. And then in today's era, I think it's misused. The Seth Rollins curb stomp is misused. it should be the ultimate finishing move, but it's become sort of an in-match nuance.
We do got to get a break, though, DP. Sorry to cut you off here. We're running a little late here, so I'll let you wrap up real quick here.
Only because you're on a pitch. Only because you're on a pitch count. Only because you're on a pitch count.
And go back to sleep.
All right.
Yeah. No. Harrison, hold on. It's his radio station. Only because you're on a pitch count, DP.
No.
Harrison
is under strict orders from me to keep me in line and on time. So. Bravo, Harrison. Well done, young man.
All right. Appreciate it, DP. And again, it's great to hear from you, man. It'll be great once you get back in here, but definitely, like Haas said, you're on pitch count, so we'll keep an eye on it.
All right, guys. Enjoy your Sunday.
I appreciate it.
DP.
With that being said, though, yeah, I would throw RK just because I remember my high school, just RKOs out of nowhere. That's what I was going through. People were coming at me with the RKOs, so I'm glad that one made the list.